All right, this is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I am your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle. Joining me once again, my buddy Jason McVeigh, PWI contributing writer. Happy holidays, Jason.
Yes, same to you, Al. I'm admiring your sweater there. That is a classic.
Thank you. Yes, one of a collection of ugly wrestling sweaters that my lovely wife has given me over the years that I certainly appreciate. Hope to be joined by Brian Solomon soon. I think he might still be partying. His birthday was last week, so maybe still hasn't kind of snapped out of that. But if he, we're a little pressed for time. But if he joins in, we'll let him in certainly, and he'll join the conversation. Either way, we got a lot to talk about. I expect this is probably the final episode of the year, so wanted to kind of look back at 2024, also look ahead at 2025, in particular with WWE, AEW, the big companies. So we'll talk about that. And having Jason here, one of the reasons I wanted to have Jason here was because we both worked together on the Tag Team 100. I have to remember what number we're up to. It started off as the 50, now the Tag Team 100, the 5th annual Tag Team 100. It's really cool. I take a lot of pride in that because this was like my baby, something I pitched to Stu Sachs over many years, and then we finally started it, and it's crazy to think that it's already in its 5th year. We'll talk a bit about that. Why don't we get into it just as far as plugging the latest issue? Here it is, Joe Hendry on the cover, and you'll see the Tag Team 100 talked about up top. Jason, it is the third of our big ranking issues, along with the 500 and the women's 250. I don't think a whole lot of controversy about the other two. I think this one had the potential to be a little more controversial than the others. Let me pull it up. If you all haven't heard, our number one ranked tag team of 2024, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. A fine tag team, a tag team that I think had a great year. I think also, if we're being honest, not the strongest a year for tag teams. And I think that's something that we both struggled with. And certainly Kevin was looking at who the candidates were and thinking like, really? I mean, is this what we have to work with? And coming off years where, FTR twice, Young Bucks, Usos, these are all legendary tag teams. And, I think only the Bucks made the top 10 this year. Did FTR make the top 10? I don't think they did.
I don't think.
Yeah, let's see. They are number 10, exactly 10. Yeah, we highlight in this because the number is small. We highlight the top 4, and I think the Bucks made 4. But yeah, I mean, certainly a year after both AEW and WWE for a number of years, I think we're pretty gung ho in a way that we hadn't seen in a long time in pushing tag teams, even as main event acts. I mean, we saw the Usos and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn headline night 1 of WrestleMania a year ago. Certainly the Young Bucks and FTR, consistent main event players in AEW and Ring of Honor throughout 2023. And then 2024, what do you think was behind it? Do you think it was a deliberate change in philosophy, or is it just that, some of these, the downside, I think, and it's certainly, I think, the case with this year's number one, is that when you have a tag team, even a really successful tag team, inevitably you've got wrestlers who want to go it alone, right? I mean, nobody dreams, I shouldn't say nobody, but few people dream, their ultimate dream in wrestling is being a tag team champion. They want to be a world champion. They want to headline WrestleMania, that kind of thing. So having a really strong tag team is always a little kind of fraught because it's almost inevitable, with few exceptions. The Young Bucks, FTR really stood the test of time. It's a matter of time before they go at it their own. Is that one of the things that kind of happened this year?
I think maybe so. And I think just what you said there, it's a shift in philosophy, I think, for the companies. I remember Kevin asked me maybe towards the end of the summer, start of the autumn, who do you think's a really good tag team this year? Who could be number 1 when we come to do this list? And I jokingly said Axiom and Nathan Fraser.
They were my pick for number 1.
Yeah, they stood out as the most, and that was a kind of a half joke. And then I thought about it, like, they're probably the most consistent team this year because it's been such a strange year for tag team wrestling. I don't know what the decision is behind it. I think you raise a good point. A lot of wrestlers dream of, I'm a single star. I win the main event of WrestleMania myself, not with someone else. There are a few exceptions, yeah. It's been a strange year for AEW, who have a lot of tag teams, but I think it speaks to their kind of booking philosophy that people were in and out, and the Bucks, who maybe were the tag team champions for the longest during the year, had a whole shtick of we don't wrestle very often, and that became our gimmick and things. So very, very strange. And WWE moved away and focused on other things. So I think it was just strange timing.
Yeah, and the Young Bucks, were a headline act in AEW this year. For a while, they're really the centerpiece act of the entire promotion, and did good work. I mean, remember the Sting's retirement match? A lot of that was carried by Young Bucks, not just that match, but the storyline leading up to it. I mean, they really were doing a terrific work. But even since we put this list together, I think this has happened on both companies, and maybe on their part, it was a realization of some of what we're saying, is that you have seen something of another shift, or a focusing on more established tag teams, where I think the first half or more than half of the year, it was kind of these makeshift tag teams. But then you saw in WWE them put the belts on the Motor City Machine Guns, and then go from there to DIY, to really established tag teams. Over on Raw just this past Monday night, we saw them finally put the titles on the War Raiders, another tag team that's been around for a while, and I think have done a good job of kind of cementing themselves as a championship-worthy act. Over on AEW, I think kind of a surprise move, putting the World Tag titles on Private Party, which have kind of been like a middling tag team for a long time. And I think the trade-off in all of those is, yes, you're putting the titles back on established tag teams that are very much part of the tag team division. But I think, without exception, everybody I just mentioned, none of those people are headlining a show.
No, definitely not. And I think what you saw, even with our number one team, like Jade and Bianca, I don't want to spoil things too much for people going forward, but that is a team who are going to turn on each other at
They might have already,
they might have already, yes. So like we see
when we talk about Jade being attacked, I mean, I think certainly the most likely candidate is Bianca.
I think there's something to be said to that, and Naomi's in the mix, and what are her intentions and everything else. But in wrestling, wrestling is story driven, and always, has been for a long time. A lot of tag teams are put together for the purpose of, at some point, we're splitting them up and they're going to feud. And this is why a lot of teams are only ever there temporarily. And so it makes it difficult. Then it also speaks to the problem of too many title belts. And is that a problem for WWE? Yes, on the SmackDown side of things, you had the Motor City Machine Guns, you had DIY, you had good kind of consistent teams. On the other side, on Raw, you had Finn Balor and JD McDonough, who I do the weekly ratings updates and the print ratings, the magazines. Yeah. They defended the belts maybe twice in 4 months. Mm-hmm. And when they were on TV, they were doing separate things, and Finn was involved more in main event stuff. And so it was terrible. So, are there too many title belts for the amount of tag teams that there are, is something to consider as well.
Yeah, and it is this catch-22 of, you can put your tag team title on big stars, and I think that was the formula with Jade and Bianca, and I think it worked in there, especially on Bianca had wrestled for the world title at WrestleMania. What was it, 4 years in a row, and then this year kind of found herself on the outs. And I think it was pretty great that they thought, like, well, instead of sort of like settling for some mid-card thing, let's go into the tag division and dominate it and become sort of like a headline act in the tag division. And I think it worked out really well. I think Bianca and Jade had really good chemistry. I think it was a good way to introduce Jade, who is still a little wet behind the ears, but worked in, you could kind of limit her interaction and still bring her up slowly while using her star power. So I think it worked really well. I mentioned in my write-up for them that there have been comparisons to the Mega Powers, to Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, in that you have like these two big single stars aligning, kind of creating sort of like a super group. And again, the downside of that is we know how it ended for Savage and Hogan. Do you assume that's where this is headed? I mean, is that maybe WrestleMania, which I think would be really good?
100%. I don't know. There are rumors about Jade's injury and a legit injury maybe there, so I don't know. But, if everything had gone to plan and everyone's healthy, I think Bianca and Jade at WrestleMania is definitely the match that's happening there.
Yeah. So to quickly go over the top 10, so you have Jade and Bianca number 1 for Axiom, Nathan Frazier and Axiom, who I think in terms of like what you think of as a tag team, checked all the boxes in a way that nobody else did this year, and I really enjoy them. They're super fun to watch. I like that there is this sort of tension between them, but not in a way that you worry about them breaking up. It's just kind of like two buddies who are constantly sort of like annoyed with each other and mad at each other. It really works. It's a really good dynamic. But you'll see there in terms of like a star power, it really falls. Bishamon, number 3, New Japan's top tag team for a number of years, but even they had kind of an off year. So it speaks to like, again, maybe lack of depth here. Young Bucks at number 4, TMDK at number 5. This New Japan's, I think, current tag team champions, Mikey Nichols and Shane Hayes. The ABC, TNA's top tag team, Ace Austin and Chris Bay. Number 6, the Saito brothers out of All Japan. At number 7, the Bloodline at number 8. Again, I don't know if you really think of them as a traditional tag team. There was different kind of combinations there, but they did hold the tag team championship for a number of months. Crazy Star at number 9, which is a big women's tag team in Stardom, and FTR number 10. So again, coming off the years of, there were years where it was almost like an embarrassment of riches, where we had FTR and the Bucks and the Usos all headlining shows, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And so a big drop. I wouldn't say a drop off, but maybe kind of like a return to the mean, because the reality is that this is where we're at now, is where it's been for a long time, but for that kind of blip that coincided with when we started this list, where it seemed to be kind of a resurgence in tag team wrestling, but kind of seems to have gone back to being kind of a mid-card attraction.
I think our tag team list as well, I think it suffers more with the changes of wrestling more than, our PWI 500 or our women's list. It's because things change. Even if you look at our top 10 now in the current issue of the magazine of those tag teams, I mean, Bishamon have lost the New Japan title since then. The team that took them, not Bishamon, TMDK lost the titles. The team that took them, Hanari and Great Khan, I think Hanari got injured, so then the titles have been vacated. Jade and Bianca aren't teaming together at the moment, so the tag teams come and go. It seems to be a lot quicker, and that kind of feeds into, it's one of the criteria that we evaluate for the list, is that they have to be a team currently active.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's something we look at in years to come. Do we change it and evaluate, well, who was an active team throughout the year, even if they're not now, because then that might open up more possibilities to us.
Yeah, and I've quibbled with our activity criteria for all the lists, and for the tag team in particular, it could be really problematic because, how long does a tag team last? With the exceptions of like teams like FTR and the Young Bucks, who are sort of like connected at the hip. When we're talking about tag teams, one other team that I wanted to bring up that I remember when they came up, talking about looking ahead about what to watch in 2025. When this name came up this year, I was thinking, I don't even know that they rank, and that's the New Day, right? Who are these tag team legends, but really were doing nothing for so long. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
All right, I'm here finally. Sorry,
I haven't missed anything. We're talking about the tag team list, about to wrap up. We're just bringing up the New Day. and how you know, you talk about an act that all of a sudden is like freshened up, and I think could be really relevant in 2025. What did either of you? What did you think of the angle with them turning heel? I thought it was fantastic. I didn't see it coming, which is not something that you can say too often in wrestling. And when you don't see something coming, it's often a bad thing because it means it makes no sense. But this really did work out. I mean, I thought it made all the sense in the world. What did you think, Brian, of a New Day's turn?
Well, I mean, the Xavier Woods turn you had to see coming, though, right?
Because they were going to be
right.
Yeah.
You thought it was going to be that, and they went in a different direction. I think it was fantastic, and I said this on Twitter. I think what is selling this is Kofi more than anything for me.
He's like, one of those, like a Ricky Steamboat or Tito Santana that you never thought you'd see here.
But see, what's making it work for me, and he is doing something amazing, because nothing against Xavier Woods, but what he's doing is more of a conventional, heel turn. I'm a bitter heel now. Everybody turned on me. No one likes me. Whereas Kofi is still the same guy. Like he's pulling it off where he is putting himself out there as, I'm a decent guy, and why does all of a sudden nobody like me? Like, what's going on? He's not doing anything that's outwardly obnoxious, at least not yet. He's still coming across as this earnest guy who is looking around and being so heartbroken that no one wants to talk to him anymore, and he can't see that it's because he's with this jerk over here that's manipulated him right in the wrong direction. It's so well done. That's what's making it work for me.
I think that's the story of WWE in 2024 is there really is kind of a sophistication in the way they handle a lot of these storylines. And it's always been one of the most difficult things in wrestling is riding that line between reality and fiction, but in a way that doesn't insult the audience. And it's stuff like this. When Kofi in that turn said Steve Austin broke his neck and he came right back, everybody was like, "Oh my God, what a jerk thing to say!" It was perfect.
But he doesn't see it that way, right? And he's not even. And when he says it, he in his mind, he's not saying it in a way like if Xavier Woods would say it, he would use it as a way to taunt Big E. Whereas with Kofi, he thinks he's making a really great point. And he's saying it very honestly.
Yeah.
Right. Like really, we wanted you back, just like Steve Austin. But it comes across so badly, like he doesn't realize how it sounds, It's great.
Yeah. So, Jason, I mean, in terms of looking ahead to the tag team scene in 2025, that's something to be excited about. I mean, I think one of the stalest acts in a long time from WWE now becomes one of the most exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a fresh coat of paint can do wonders, and they were long overdue one. I think like WrestleMania this year, I mean, you had Awesome Truth win that ladder match at WrestleMania and win the tag belts, and nothing against Miz and Truth, who are awesome, no pun intended, but WWE needs fresh acts, and there was nothing fresh about that. Something like the New Day, they've got a whole new lease on life now in this, and I would like to see where they go with this.
Yeah, really excited to see that. Anyhow, that was a very long plug for the news issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Go pick it up in addition to the Tag Team 100.
Wow, you're still on the plugs. Holy cow.
Yeah, well, long conversation about the list.
Stalling.
Again, a feature on Joe Henry, on Maple Leaf Wrestling, on a lot more. So go check it out, PWI-online.com. Still in the holiday season, so pick up that subscription for the wrestling fan in your life, or a PWI shirt, or an old bundle of classics. My kids have gotten into comic books, and we were at the comic book store, and it's a thing now to just re-release old comics from the 80s. And I was thinking, like, we're doing this too. So, and ours are the originals. These aren't reprints. They're literally boxes of old magazines that were unearthed, original printings that you can pick up, some of them decades old. So a really neat thing for wrestling fans. Again, PWI-online.com. One thing I wanted to say at the beginning of the show, you weren't here to say it. Happy birthday, Brian.
Thank you.
Yes, and you spent it, I think, how most wrestling fans would like to, and that was watching a crap ton of wrestling over a couple of days, right?
Two 2 days of WWE TV in a row. I haven't done that since I worked for the company. I was at the Friday night SmackDown in Hartford, and then the next night I was in the press box for Saturday night's main event at the Nassau Coliseum, which was amazing.
Yes,
great
I was there
show.
too. I had, I'm sure, a lot worse seats than you did. With
well, it depends if you like those kind of seats where we're way up high looking down.
Maybe
I love it.
Maybe in that sense I might have been maybe around the same. But thankfully the Coliseum's not that big, and it really was such a fun show, right? I mean, how nostalgic. I'm not too proud to say I almost teared up when I heard Obsession at the beginning of the show. And
I did too.
It was really like what I was counting on was I really want him to embrace the nostalgia. And I was like, please let them make it look exactly like the 80s intro. And you got to end it with Cody posing next to the Saturday Night's Main Event logo in the old Hulk Hogan spot. And they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, but they didn't end it with Phil Collins' "Take Me Home" over the closing credits stuff.
I forgot that. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I will say this about it, though, and I loved it. Because people were nitpicking, well, they didn't do this. They didn't do the promos in the beginning. Yeah. They didn't, they still had all the crazy pyro and the lights, and they still had this, and they didn't do that. And I think they walked the line perfectly. You don't want it to be NWA Power. As much as I loved what they did with NWA Power, you don't want to go that far with this. They did the nostalgia, but also made it a modern presentation because, listen, we're talking about a 40-year-old show here. Now, if they were doing a television show in the 80s for us when we were kids, they're not going to be like, hey, it's going to be just like the 40s, kids. You know what I mean? So you have to take that into account. And I think they did it perfectly. It was all the great stuff for the old fans. The song was clinch, and they eat clutch, whatever. And they even did the generic Jim Johnston Saturday Night's Main Event theme.
When I heard that, I got nervous, right? Because I'm like,
I did too. But they did that on purpose. I think they wanted us to get nervous and think they weren't going to do it. They did it even better, the song, than the original show, because they had the whole song, the lyrics, everything. They, I don't know, there was this one moment which was so jaw-dropping, especially from the Crow's Nest, that I recorded it. And I don't know if it was just during a commercial break or if it made it to TV, where they played almost the whole song and in the middle of the show, and the lights are going and the graphics are going. The lights are going everywhere. And I just took in the whole thing. Yeah. It's just a level of production value that no one else does but them.
The one sort of nitpicky thing, and I really enjoyed it too, but I do think that one of the appeals of the old 80s and 90s Saturday Night's Main Event was that it was looking to appeal to the casual fan.
Right.
So it wasn't just about good wrestling matches. It was a lot of, kind of fun skits and backstage stuff. And this show was almost completely absent. It was a wrestling show. Was there even a promo? In the prior 2 hours?
I mean, they probably could have used some of those backstage, like Mean Gene style promos.
And they did some. It was all online, digital. So a lot of the stuff I was looking for, they did. You talk about the intro with the different promos at the beginning and like the synthesizer music in the back. They did that.
Well, I think, unfortunately, the problem with doing that now is, for a lot of fans, it'll come off as ripping off Collision, because Collision ripped off Saturday Night's Main Event. Yeah. Collision does that on Saturday nights because they're trying to give a Saturday Night's Main Event vibe. So I kind of thought maybe that's why they didn't want to include it on the show. But I thought, like, the one thing that was very old school in a good way was the way the show was constructed, where you had it wasn't a lot of talky in-ring promo segments. It was it wasn't there were no epically long matches. It really was built like a Saturday Night's Main Event. And even in the way that they saved all the shenanigans, really mostly, for the main attraction match, even though I know in the old days the main event on that show would often be on first because of the time slot. But if you notice, even the opening match with Sammy and McIntyre, they didn't do a lot. There wasn't a lot of craziness. It was pretty straightforward. And it was because it was the opening, and they built and they built. And then the main event, the minute Kevin Owens had that big Dusty Rhodes red elbow pad on, I knew we were in for shenanigans. I almost thought they were going to do a Dusty finish and have him get the belt and then give it back. But they saved all that for the end. The ref bumps, now they're gonna. It looks like they're gonna build a whole angle out of the Winged Eagle belt. It was just very well structured.
Yeah, Jason, what did you think of Jesse the Body Ventura?
Do you know what? I am a sucker for nostalgia, and as Brian said, this walked the right line between too much and not enough. It was fun to see Jesse there. Was it the Jesse of old? No, but if I get to his age, I don't expect to be anywhere near like that either. So it was just great to see him there. And if it's 4 times a year, I am more than happy to see Jesse the Body Ventura come out 4 times a year. And if he's only going to commentate on one match during it, great. I will look forward to it.
Yeah, I think that was the way to do it, and I think they nailed it. Jesse looks enough like it, and it really is. It's both sad, but also kind of beautiful that you have somebody left from that era, because almost nobody is, right? I mean, especially among the announcers, you think about like the voices of our childhood, Gorilla Monsoon, something about Brian, Bobby Heenan. Mean Gene Okerlund, they're all gone, and there's Jesse the Body Ventura on commentary. Clearly hasn't kept up the speed that much on the product, but and he kept on giving his back to the camera, which is a big no-no, and I noticed that. But overall, I think he was fine. I think he'll be better next time, and even better the time after that. But what do you think now? Because this was an issue when they last resuscitated Saturday Night's Main Event 15, 16 years ago, was like, kind of, what do you do with this? I mean, how do you make it stand out from the rest of WWE's TV product? Jason, do you think that there is, and it was successful, it did really well apparently, but do you think that it can continue to be successful? Do you think that there is a place for it in WWE's television portfolio?
I think there's a place for it, certainly. And again, it goes back to, are we doing this 4 times a year? If so, and I think if they do it as this little nostalgia show 4 times a year, it's fine and it'll work. I mean, I have a friend of mine who said, "What's the big deal about the Winged Eagle belt? Who cares?" And I was like, "I care. I grew up with this. So if it means I can see this on TV for a bit, great." And it's the same. Happy to see Jesse the Body Ventura 4 times a year. Happy to see the referees wear a button-up shirt with a bow tie. I mean,
that's my preferred look. Yes.
Yeah, I get such a kick out of that. So if this becomes, WWE's 4 shows a year where they pay tribute to the past, great. They can make a series out of that.
And I hope they continue to keep it sort of like the retro thing, because I hope it's not one and done. Because then it really does start to look like every other show. And this could be the signature of Saturday Night's Main Event, is that it's a little bit retro. They used to do old school Raw or whatever.
Old school Raw, yeah.
And those were fun too. I love the red, white, and blue ropes. I think they should have kept them all the time. I think that's like the look of the WWE ring. But yeah, I hope that this is the signature of Saturday Night's Main Event going forward.
The thing about it, though, Saturday Night's Main Event, is that it predates the era of regular pay-per-views, right? When it first started, there was really just WrestleMania, and it really even took a couple of years before there was Survivor Series. So, it's less of a special thing. There's no doubt about that. I mean, a radical idea. I don't know if they should do this, because 4 times is a lot, but in this time period where we don't care about, there's no buy rates anymore, right? Everything is to draw subscribers and draw attention to Peacock and all that stuff. And so it doesn't matter what's on there. Maybe they want to think about, sometimes or every time, if you've got a Saturday Night's Main Event, that's your big event for the month. You don't do the pay-per-view a week later or 2 weeks later. Maybe that's a way to keep it special. Like, it's whatever month. Okay, Saturday Night's Main Event this month. That's the big show where all the big things are going to happen. I don't know if they'll do that 4 months out of the year, but I mean, it's one thought. I just want to say one thing about Jesse, because I didn't get to talk about Jesse. When he first came out, because I was there live, I think I was a little bit worried. I was like, oh no, he's an old man now. But Kevin Owen. But I will say, when he was on commentary, he was phenomenal. And I loved, like, he didn't miss a beat, and he was doing things that they never do. And the idea of, and I have to imagine maybe they sat him down and said, well, this will be your approach. Having Cody as his new Hogan, as his new whipping boy, the focus of his hatred, the ultimate hypocrite. And on top of that, you know, a hypocrite like his dad. I think that is fantastic. Like when he said, like, the reason one of the ways I knew that he was Dusty's son was his ego. Like that's a perfect tack for him to take. You know, it's like his sweet spot. He has a hypocritical babyface champion that he could rail against, and he was just perfect at it. Just got it.
I also really, I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say the joy of people like Jesse and Bobby Heenan on commentary back in the day was that they would point out things that made you question, actually, he might have a point. He's being a total heel, but he's making sense. And I thought that we haven't seen that on years in WWE television. The commentators became kind of bland and just, you know, it was like talking heads and just, yeah. But there was real personality to Jesse. You know, it's still there. So I'm happy to see more of that.
Yeah. The other thing I liked was that, you know, he still had kind of an old school sensibility of like, oh, that move would have finished any other opponent. And
I did say that. Yeah.
I mean, like that he really was kind of, and what was a finisher in his time is so different than what it is now. It's sort of fun. It's like when you sit your dad in front of the TV to watch wrestling and
right.
You know, looking at it through sort of different eyes. So I really liked it. Yeah, I mean, a home run for WWE. You know, I wanted to talk about sort of the year in wrestling for both WWE and AEW, but I do think a fitting not to go into everything that happened in WWE over the year, but a fitting end into what was I think objectively an incredibly strong year for WWE. I mean, I don't know when's the last time top to bottom, you know, I sort of felt this good about the product. It's just thoroughly enjoyable to watch. They had so many home runs over the year. Just everything kind of worked, you know, it's like they were not a lot of cases of like, why are you pushing this guy and not pushing that guy? They're sort of pushing the right people. The storylines made sense. The payoffs delivered. The matches were good. The lineups were good. Business was really good. The arenas are packed. People are watching on TV. I mean, you can't say enough good things. Brian, you know, real quick, why is this all? Is this Triple H? Is this Vince being gone? Is this Nick Khan?
This is, you know, when the sale first happened and was first going through, which is now, this whole thing is, what is it, like almost 2 years now of a process, right? We talked about it. I remember so well. We said, now that this is happening, there's not going to be any dramatic light switching. There's not going to be like, oh, it's the first Raw of Endeavor. Oh my God, it's all different. Like, that's not going to happen. But we said that looking back in a year, 2 years, we are going to say, wow, this is a different company. And that is exactly what we're doing right now. It is the trickle effect, I believe, of this changeover in ownership, the freshness of a different perspective, Vince not being there. A big part of it is Hunter. It's a lot more than that. The new TV production from this new guy who's already in hot water, apparently, for treating women like crap. What else is new? Welcome to the wrestling business. But I mean, all these pieces, right? This is a new company. It is a new product now. And that's why, like, I scratch my head when I still see people who are like, I don't get it. It's the same as it ever was. It still sucks. I'm like, you are not, you don't have your eyes open. You're not watching the same thing. You may say, I don't like this. Fine. This isn't my kind of wrestling, but there's no way you can tell me that this is the same product. It's not the same product. It's not the same production. It's a whole different world right now.
Yeah. But I think that's a good point, is like the real casual viewer to be like, well, there's still two guys in their underwear fighting in a ring. How is this different? But it is like those subtle nuances that not only make it better, but that's what makes a difference in business, right? That's how you heat up
Right.
business. That's how you create stars, and it's why WWE is hot right now and wasn't
Well,
a few years ago.
It's because they're doing what they always needed to do, and what only happens when you get new people in there, which is questioning everything.
Yeah.
The idea of saying, well, why do we do this like this? Why do we always do this? Why can't we do this? What's the reason? Why? Well, because that's just how we do it, right? So that's what happens when you freshen everybody up. That's what you open the windows, open the shutters,
Jason, how are you feeling about WWE in 2025? What, if anything, is there to look forward to? The big one obviously happens the first week of the year, and that's Raw moving over to Netflix. How does that change the company for the better or for the worse?
I think it's huge for them. It opens new doors. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who have Netflix who have never seen WWE, and now they're about to. And that sounds silly, but I know people who are going to watch because they have Netflix, and it's different from country to country. But like here in the UK and Ireland, WWE on Netflix is the only way you can now watch it from January of 2025. And there's going to be a lot of people stumbling across this for the first time. So it's going to open up so many doors for them.
And it's really a milestone. We talk all the time about how you really can't measure TV viewership or ratings the way you used to. And this is kind of the ultimate sort of like a milestone in that they're just going to be off of television now. I mean, and I don't know how I was writing up a write-up for the top 10 stories of the year for PWI about WrestleMania, and I do it every year, and you kind of look at WrestleMania metrics, and I was just looking for like a viewership number, and what I was finding was like social media impressions and all this stuff, and it's really like it's a whole new world, and we're seeing it with we'll see in the beginning of the year. Any concerns, Brian, about Raw going over to Netflix? Do you think it's just going to be they're loading up the first show, obviously, the battle for the Ulafala, and now we know Liv and Rhea Ripley, which is about as big a women's match as they can put together.
Right.
Do you think after that first week or so, it just kind of business as usual and Raw as we know it?
Well, I have a couple of concerns that I don't think are going to be very serious, but they're things that I think about and wonder about. And I think we talked about it, but one of them is, the viewing model on Netflix and a lot of streaming TV is not so much geared right towards appointment viewing or live viewing. And I know on Raw it won't always be that way. There'll be an on-demand aspect to it. But when you're talking about a weekly 3-hour pseudo sporting event, like this isn't a show you can binge. This isn't a show where you could say, I'll give it like a couple of months and I'll catch up. Like, no, you can't do that. So you have to retrain the viewing habits of some people, like some of these people that will only be finding it on Netflix, like you were saying, that aren't used to watching it already. They're going to have to say, oh crap, I have to watch this like every week, or I'm not going to know what's happening. The other thing that I worry about, but I think the viewer replacement will overcome this, like all the newer, younger fans or people discovering it, is you can't tell me, look, I'm 50 years old and I have trouble keeping up with things. You can't tell me that there isn't a certain segment of the people that watch Raw right now that are just going to go away because they don't even know what Netflix is, right? Or they don't know how to work it, or they are just not attuned to streaming. They're still cable linear TV watchers. They're out there. There's millions of them still out there. Believe me, but they tend to be a little older. There is going to be some loss of viewers, but I do think that whatever number it is will be replaced to a degree that I don't think it's going to have an effect. I don't think. We'll see.
And they'll still have SmackDown on regular TV, so they can hold on to those and try to, over the course of the year and beyond, drive those people to Netflix. But yeah, it's going to be something that they have to stay on top of. The other company, and not to switch kind of tones too much, but without exaggerating, as strong a year as it was for WWE, there's no two ways about it. It was a really challenging year for AEW, and certainly the case here, closing out 2024 with a lot of metrics that are really alarming and concerning. I mean, they're hitting record lows for television ratings, for attendance, almost weekly. Now, you offset that with also the reality that they in 2024 landed this huge TV deal that makes them whatever is the second most profitable wrestling company behind WWE ever, maybe WCW. But on one hand, there's real contradiction. On one hand, this deal that really suggests this is a really successful company. I mean, look at what they're onto, and in 2025 on Max, which is another like huge coup. We talk about the streaming space, so they'll be part of it, and began the year winning a bunch of bidding wars, for the former Sasha Banks, for Will Ospreay, for Okada. These were all great things, but all of that, all those successes, almost kind of compounds the frustration of why they're struggling so much, and some of it is out of their hands, and you could talk about the change in the TV landscape and the reality that WWE is doing so good. So in them doing so well, we've talked about it, that there's less reason to go to an alternative because the major leagues is really powerful. But I think, just objectively, you've seen a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad decisions over the years, frustrating decisions over the year, I should say. And we talked about in the last episode, for me, one of the most frustrating things is this continued sort of prioritization over everything else on just match quality. And sort of fittingly, we're closing the year out with the Continental Classic. And so, at a time where like so much of my frustration with AEW is like, tell good stories, get characters over, give me somebody to care about. I turn on the TV each week and there's like an Excel spreadsheet of match combinations and them talking about, oh, this one's going to be really great because of these two guys, their styles are going to mesh so well. And, and I know that they're, for a certain kind of fan, their mouths do water over the prospect of, Kyle Fletcher and Okada or whatever the combination is. But if you like it, great. I'm going to see Ring of Honor Final Battle tomorrow night. And I loved Ring of Honor for years because their signature was like really great work rate and high quality wrestling. But I think we're seeing now that on a mainstream level, when you're trying to compete with WWE, it just doesn't work. I mean, you need to give people something more. So, Jason, your take on AEW's 2024.
I really don't want to be negative because I want AEW to be successful and be good. And they are being successful. You've touched on that. But it is so hard. And I have to say, just for me personally, I have lost interest so much in AEW this year. We talk about all of the fresh things in WWE that have made them better and made them a success. AEW needs freshened up badly. And that's shocking to say for a company that's been in existence, 5 years, maybe? I mean,
yeah. And just got many of its biggest stars this year.
Absolutely. But this is the problem. They got all of these big names this year. And what did it mean? Yeah. It meant we had more people to put on good in-ring wrestling matches, but we already had that anyway with other people. So what's the difference-making thing here? AEW has been a victim of its own success, I think, in the fact that whenever they had one weekly television show and 4 pay-per-views a year, it was easier to think, oh, wow, all these shows are great. Now they've got Collision and they've got Rampage, and Rampage became a throwaway show almost. Collision has now almost become a throwaway show. The Battle of the Belts specials that they did became just afterthoughts. It is so hard to see where they're going with things, and they continue the same formula of, let's just put on, here's, Will Ospreay against Kyle Fletcher, and okay, there's a bit of story here, and it's a great match, but what does it mean next week? What does it mean the week after? They've got this great TV deal that's going to help them, but they need to freshen things up and go a different direction, because in terms of just general interest, WWE is killing them right now.
Yeah. Brian, go ahead. I mean, what if anything are your frustrations? And not to beat a dead horse, I feel like we have this conversation every week. I mean, the one thing that I think is objectively the case, and that's nobody can dispute, is that what's the single most important thing in wrestling, and that's having stars. And if you judge by their payroll, there's no shortage of stars. But who is that guy? Who is Cody Rhodes in AEW right now? Maybe it should be Will Ospreay, and maybe you'll get there. I mean, I think he is clearly the most worthy candidate.
But it's like they go to work on you the minute you walk in there, making you less of a star as soon as you arrive.
Yeah, they had Cody
Rhodes.
Rhodes.
The worst example of that, I think.
They had Cody, right? Their Cody Rhodes was Cody Rhodes.
That's a good
Will Ospreay is already now just becoming another guy. I can't even believe it, and I really liked him. He loses to Darby Allin in the Continental Classic. I know Darby Allin's not a jobber or anything, but I mean, and why? It's because you have this Excel spreadsheet, like you said, where you throw everybody in a hopper. So now everybody's got to lose to everybody. And I think the Continental Classic is ratings death.
It worked last year, though. I mean, I was down on it last year, and I had to eat crow that it worked pretty well. I mean, I think it did all right in the ratings. People genuinely got into it, and you were there for World's End last year, where with the finale, I think people genuinely got into it. And maybe we get there this year, and like in all of wrestling, and really, what's going to make the difference is who shines in it and who ultimately wins. But I do think timing wise, it feels like the worst time ever to do a tournament that is solely focused on work rate.
Well, because I think now we're at a stage, it's very clear to me that, and look, they just got rewarded with this TV deal to further reinforce that, where they are just going to lean into what they are. They're not going to go the TNA route of trying to just become like WWE light. They're not going to do that, which they did years ago. They are just going to cater to their diehards and give them their work rate and their American version of a Japanese wrestling promotion, whatever it is they're trying to do. And they are just going to, and when I say they, I'm talking about one person. They are going to just dig their heels in. And that is what it's going to be. And the fact that they got the deal that they got is so interesting to me, because let's break this down. Let's logically look at this. Logically, there is no way that they got that deal because of overwhelming success as a wrestling company. We know that. Their numbers in every metric practically are trending downward. The quality of the show has visibly depreciated on every live, everything. So it's not like somebody looked and goes like, wow, this company's on fire, man. We got to throw as much money as possible at them. So the question is then why? How did this happen? And I think it just goes to show, with the changing landscape of television and the way that TV is produced and run, it almost seems like you can be this sort of zombie trudging along, and they will throw money at you because they're just trying to fill up hours and they're trying to put something on there. And as long as someone's watching, it almost doesn't seem to matter very much. It's kind of a weird thing. Like, if you're in the right position, if you have the right owner, if you're on the right network, and you don't completely screw things up, it's just going to be a gravy train, which is weird in a way, because it's almost like there's no incentives anymore to even be good. Strange.
But you can only get away with that for so long, right? Because I think, AW's credit, they earned that TV deal with 5 years of largely a really good product. And I can sort of picture them putting together the scissor reel not scissor reel, what they call it, the sizzle reel for the, I'm getting my AW tag teams mixed up, with like the 5-year highlights, and you show Wembley Stadium, and you show Sting's retirement, and you show the debut of Mercedes, and you present it to Warner Brothers Discovery, right. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's 5 years of success here with some blips along the way, but now you start new, right? Now you start counting from now, and unless things turn around, that deal will expire at some point. I don't know how long it is. Let's say it's a couple of years. And what are you going to show 2 years from now? Arenas that are, 3/4 empty, 1,500 people. Some of these numbers for I read where their viewership in that key male demo, whatever it is, like 18 to 34, is down to the 4 digits for some of these shows. It was something like 6,000 or something. And if that's the case, I mean, that is beyond alarming.
You talking about TV viewership?
Yes, I think it was for a certain episode of Collision. And granted, it might have been like one of those holiday ones where it was on a different time slot. But what I saw was super alarming. But even going where their average rating is now for their flagship for Dynamite, it is now, south of 500,000 viewers, right? I mean, it's in that range. These are alarming numbers, and you see it with your eyes. You turn it on, and the arenas are getting smaller, the crowds are getting smaller. You hear it, right? It is like the echo of a mostly empty building.
I was at the November 13th Dynamite in Bridgeport, and I can't tell you it is just a world of difference to go to that and to then go to Nassau Coliseum for Saturday night's main event. I can't even begin. It's not even it's the amount of people. Yes, Saturday night's main event was packed to the rafters, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. I mean, there were people, you could have stood them up on the catwalk and they would have bought those tickets. And it just felt like you were at the most fun party ever. Like you're at a big giant party. And being at Dynamite in Bridgeport, it was just sad. There was a sadness. I can't even describe it. Like there were less than 2,000 people there. I'm sorry. I think there were like 2,500 people with a 3,000 seat setup in a 10,000 seat capacity arena. So it's just cavernously echoing. And the people who are there, they're just demoralized. Like the energy is not there. They're just like, the fans almost seem to be, and I think I've said this, they almost seem to be kind of hostile in a weird way. Like there's just not the same vibe. It can't, there's such a stark difference is what I'm trying to say between the experience of both of them.
Sorry, Brent, their own audience are bored with the product, which is why you cannot dig your heels in and just continue to produce the same thing that you have been doing. Because once that diehard audience gets sick of this and walks away, there is no one else left.
Even Adam Cole, who seemed bulletproof. And I've always been, I know I'm in the minority here, but I've been mystified by this guy. Like, how far could you be carried along by the fact that people just like to say your name all the time? But even that now seems to be evaporating. Like, even his untouchable aura of overness that he had now is just like with this weird endless Kyle O'Reilly MJF thing of, and now he's the baby face, but we don't even understand why he's the baby face, what it all means. Even his aura now is evaporating to me.
And that's where, like, I think they absolutely deserve criticism, because I know that there are the apologists who are like, it's still a really good product week to week, and that's fine. But I mean, you can't look at something like the way they've handled the MJF Adam Cole storyline and not say that they just completely botched it. It's been a mess. Moxley and the Death Riders, this is not an act that is exciting people. It's not working. Will Ospreay has all the tools to be like your top guy, and as you touched on, you got him losing to Darby Allin on TV and Kyle Fletcher. Now he's just racking up losses. They blew it with Swerve Strickland, on and on and on. It feels almost deliberate and stubborn. To their own detriment.
It's almost Vince-like in a weird way.
Yeah,
so maybe Vince went over there and he's running it secretly.
And it lands at the doorstep of Tony Khan, and that's where I'm not super optimistic about things changing, because you don't have that structure there to change course. If one guy's calling all the shots and this is his vision, is he going to wake up and have an epiphany that this is not the way to present wrestling? And I've thought about like what's changed, from when AEW was a lot of fun to watch up until around 2022, and until now. And I don't know what it's worth, but it coincides with the departure of Cody Rhodes, right?
Yep. And then CM Punk. That was like the 1-2 punch, Cody and Punk.
Yeah.
I think.
And so any reasons for optimism, Jason, in 2025? All In, which is now their big show, is going to be in Texas rather than in Wembley, but they're struggling. There's talk of like they sold something like 6,000 tickets. So, and I don't know what is the match. What is like the thing to look forward to?
I said this is the problem with the Wembley shows is that you're booking a stadium for, and then figuring out a wrestling show afterwards.
Yep.
You need to have the wrestling show fit for a stadium, and AEW doesn't seem to have that. There is loads of reasons to be optimistic. Their roster is jam-packed, and I know there's 8,000 wrestlers on their roster, but in all of the people that they have, there is a world of talent there. If they can just figure out a way to present them in a matter that people really care and buy in and make it appointment viewing every week, they can have a great year next year.
Yeah. Before wrap up, wanted to make a quick mention of TNA and what how they're wrapping up 2024. It's was the return of TNA in 2024. They readopted those letters in January, and now one thing that sort of shocked me was their announcement that they're running the UBS Arena near me, which is a major arena for Slammiversary. This is where AEW's run Forbidden Door. WWE's done Raw there. This is a major new arena. So I don't know what they have up their sleeve. Certainly they could kind of like, set it up for a smaller audience. But I mean, not to be negative with them, because I think it's a pretty good product overall, but to me, it doesn't feel like the kind of product. They just don't have the TV. But what they do have now, which has been huge for them, is this working relationship with
Right.
They're on kind of that. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, please go, Jason. You are the TNA master, and I mean that in the wrestling sense. So you can.
I was gonna say, like, TNA's been a bizarre beast this year, and I think losing Scott D'Amore harmed them a lot. And they've spent the rest of the year trying to figure out creatively what kind of a path they're on without him there. But they're on a bizarre run of selling out shows. And I think like the last one was the 6th consecutive sellout that they might have had, which I understand they're smaller buildings, but they are getting bigger. The venues are, and the production quality has improved greatly recently. So they seem to be on this bizarre opposite trajectory to what AEW are on. Now, I know there's still a bit of a gulf there, but I think going into 2025, there's a lot of positive things for TNA.
I think it makes me think in a way when they're doing with the relationship they have right now with WWE and NXT, running a building like that, maybe they know something that we don't know. Like maybe WWE is actually going to give them, I don't want to say heavy hitters because I don't think, Cody Rhodes is showing up at this thing, but maybe they're going to give them some decent NXT people or somebody to show up there to like help boost their house. I mean, they might. I mean, so far, this seems to be typical, like a one-way relationship with WWE getting things from them. But maybe they're going to throw them a bone here. Maybe that's what this is.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun to do something with. I still want to call him Ziggler, but essentially that's what he would be. Nick Nemeth, if he returned to NXT, but there's a built-in storyline there about you cast me out, and now look how well I've done. And
I'm the TNA World Champion,
right? Yeah, and I'm coming back here to conquer. So it could be fun. In all these cases, like you like to see wrestling companies doing well. I'm going to again Ring of Honor tomorrow night for their big show of the year. Interviewed Chris Jericho earlier today about it. Another company that in some ways. I mean, another company. I don't know if it really is another company.
A brand.
That they seem to have big things planned. They keep on talking about a TV deal. But I struggle to see, with everything, all the problems AEW has, what role a Ring of Honor even plays, why they need to be around. But I'm happy to see them. Anyway, that was my way of shoehorning Ring of Honor into the conversation also before leaving. Guys, thank you so much, not just for today, but for everything in 2024. It's been a lot of fun working with both of you, and certainly we thank all our readers for supporting us for another year. Next year, I think, is the 10th anniversary of the PWI podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, coming up at some point.
I think we need to get Steve Austin to come back in commemoration of that.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. And thanks, everybody. See you in 2025.